Welcome to the 5D Shift podcast with Openhand. It's where we're connecting up to higher dimensional consciousness, ascended masters, so to speak, and working with that energy to illuminate the challenges that we face on the planet as we emerge into a new consciousness. And in this episode, I'm asking the question, are we living in a huge simulation, as some alternative commentators would suggest? If so, what is the nature of it? And most importantly, how do we break it down? So let's dive deep into that inquiry. Stay with me. I'll be right back in just a moment. We've entered a pivotal moment in Earth's history. People in all walks of life are waking up and challenging the 3D shadow system. They're turning away from the fake stream, going inwards and igniting the passion of their soul. We're shifting consciousness into 5D. What does that mean exactly? How and when will it happen? Openhand is a higher dimensional ascended master consciousness working to illuminate the pathway forwards through the stormy transition. But this is never about telling you the truth. It's about offering essential insights into the shift, tools, meditations, and spiritual practice so you can realize your own truth. Because ascension to 5D is something only you can actualize for yourself. Get involved, explore, inquire, expand, liberate your soul. So, are we living in a simulation, as has been prophesized or spoken of and depicted tremendously in the film, for example, The Matrix, but also spoken more recently about leading spiritual or alternative commentators? I would say to a high degree, yes, but not the physical aspect of the planet that we're living upon. Nature is real. Nature is natural. We're a part of it. How do I know that? How can you know that for certain? Well, to me, yes, it's the full immersion in the five senses experience, but also that's spoken to and reflected by signs and synchronicity, your interconnectivity with it that speak deep into the soul. You can feel that resonance. You can feel the sense of reality and truth to it. And I would maintain that that is real. And I don't consider that to be some computer simulation, for example. I mean, let's look at the nature of relativity. Relativity is a perception of this in relation to that. And so everything is a perception of absolute, of presence. But the relativity is real, that is a real consciousness experience. But there is a simulation. What does that mean? What exactly am I speaking of? What are others speaking of? Well, let's talk about reality for a second. When you're in the soul, you are interconnecting with the flower of life, the natural flow of events and circumstances that speak into you and connect deep within and tell you that this is reality. You know, signs, symbols, numerology that really activate something in the depths of you, and you can feel it upwelling and you can feel your connection into the source as a result of that. And this to me is reality, and you know it when you're in it because, well, it breaks you down, it makes you feel interconnected, a part of the divine. It can bring you to tears. Just the simple observation of something in nature, a butterfly or a bird, or light coming down through the trees, and what it feels like in the rain or a storm or something like that. It feels real. It speaks into every cell of your being. This to me is real, and it's our relativistic experience of the presence of source expressing through life. However, in the universe, we are living in a multidimensional field, and there are life forms that are seeking to control other people, situations, circumstances, even civilization, in order to extract energy from it, to protect, if you like, a certain construct, a certain way of living and being. But really, what is the agenda behind that? I mean, when we look into society now, especially the last 2 or 3 years, the last few years, since the experience of this bogus pandemic, which the information is spreading now far and wide of the various nefarious agendas behind it. Well, what is that about? That is about wholesale control, but also manipulation of genetics and DNA. If you manipulate the DNA, which is the receiver carrier signal of the soul, then it's more difficult to feel the soul in this reality. And we're seeing how all aspects of society are being manipulated, from the media, big tech, big pharma, governments, the various authorities of the state. You can see that, and people are calling that rightly so. And so you've got a broad picture of some kind of energy behind it all that's trying to lock it down, control people, and stop people from really experiencing the freedom and interconnectivity of our inherent divinity. That, to me, is clear. You see people living very manipulated, controlled lifestyles, almost zombified, especially since what's happened in the last 2 or 3 years. So that is clearly going on. And those beings, those people amongst us who are expanding into their multidimensionality, are feeling these interfering influences that stop you truly connecting, for example, into the chakras. So they're experiencing interfering influences coming on or coming in that try to direct you to a particular attachment or a particular outcome that you perceive that this small self needs. And so there's an interrelation, an identification with the things that we think we want or are presented as what we should aspire to, or what we should need, or what is good or right or proper, and a connection, an affiliation, an identification with those things, whether it's the desire to fulfill oneself financially, or where you live, how you work, an attachment or a need or a conditioning for those things, and thereby it's conditioning the being, the ego, into the small self, interrelated with those things. And that's disconnecting us from our true expansive source presence that we are. And so the simulation, you can say, is coming in at an emotional, a physical, a mental level, and projecting through our perceptions the kinds of things that we should want or believe we should need, and that's interrelated with the society that's being projected around and in front of our eyes. And so it's like a mouse stuck in a spinning wheel, constantly trying to grasp, attain something out there, which often is just out of reach. And so you're efforting, you're struggling for more, or you're part of it, and that's disconnecting from the sense and the connection, the deep well of source presence that is within you. So it's disconnecting you from that. And to me, that is being done clearly on purpose. And so billions of people are trapped within that. And you can feel it when you get into the chakras and you expand multidimensionally. You can feel the sense of rightness coming in, but you can also feel around certain chakras implants, for example, that distract the signal of the soul and pull it out of that coherency of being. So you can feel that. Sensitives, empathic people can feel that as they expand through the chakras. which is why we do a lot of work here at Openhand on opening through the chakras in order to break out intervention energies and infuse one's own authentic soul frequency. Then you know you're in the truth, and that you know your choices and direction in life is being informed from your soul and not some disrupting, derailing, detaching experience that's trying to suck you into this simulation. Yes, the simulation does exist, I'm saying that too. And it exists on all levels. It's very clever. It's working, even the alternative media, for example. So how does that work? Well, for example, this intervention is an alien intervention. We can say that it's come from elsewhere. People are able to regress into experience of it back all the way to Sirius, for example. People recall in their past lives a tumultuous explosion that happened there millions of years ago. The civilization, a highly sophisticated one, very similar to what we have now, was fragmented, and many souls, traumatized in that experience. You had this very paternalistic energy that then came in that kind of hoovered up many of these souls and gave them a kind of, a comfort, a means of restoring, regenerating themselves. And you could say, therefore, that it was a benevolent intention that did that, and it brought the community to some degree in the 4D back together. However, I would also say that it's to the 4D angelic realm that we really should move to once you let go of physical incarnation. Either that, or you're ascending into 5, 6, 7D. And so this was kind of like a collectivized bubble that got formed and created at that point from the trauma that happened. And there was a leading entity behind that, which we can call Ra. And we see this depicted, we see this energy, this entity depicted on the planet in the advanced civilization of Egypt, for example, where Ra was the god that essentially they worshipped and sought energy from. And so you have this energy, this entity, but also we can say that they were a part, or the Anunnaki were a part of that. Anunnaki were architects within that civilization, within that orchestration, and that energy found its way here. How can you prove that? Well, you can look back through history and see the calling cards. You can see how human genetics were manipulated. That's clearly the case and evident in the chromosome count, for example, how we mysteriously went from 48 chromosomes to 46, where the second and the third chromosomes were sealed in. And in the Resurrection book, I've intimated why that was a key calling card that was showing people that their God had created them, hybridized them from original humans, should anyone care to look that deep and consider that far. So you can see that the genetic field has been manipulated, controlled, shifted from originals to Homo sapiens, and that was sealed in by a chromosome fusion of the second and the third on the paternal and maternal lineages. You can see that in the genetics, it's really clear. I wrote about it in the book Divinicus, I shared the evidence of it. But you can also see it in the megaliths that go back through history, and how tremendous constructs were made, like the pyramids, for example, that could not have been done with basic chipping technology. This was highly advanced work when you look at the various configurations within their structure, like the mathematical figures of pi and the speed of light, for example, how they're orientated in the northwest, south, southeast poles, how they relate to Orion's belt in their alignment, and point all the way back, of course, to Sirius, the origination of the architect for all of this. And I call him the architect. Yes, we can say that, and it's very clearly metaphored, well depicted in the film The Matrix. And so a simulation has been created to reestablish that civilization on the planet. And you see that going all the way back to ancient times in Egypt, and it's depicted in the hieroglyphs. But also people having past life regressions all the way back into that karmic era. So you have this paternalistic energy, it's feeding through on many levels. It's also coming through in spirituality. So let's take a look now at how this raw energy is creating a simulation around spiritual work, because that's something we really need to be fundamentally clear about in ourselves, and it's something I've spoken about in the new book Resurrection in Depth, because we want to make sure that we're not being harvested off into some 4D bubble as opposed to going with the ascension itself as the planet shifts into higher consciousness. Let's look then at how this intervention of this entity is creating simulation within spirituality. It all hinges around the need for identity, the ego's desire to attain something, to reach something, to accomplish something, and have some kind of tangible physical validation, existential connection into a source or central entity or being. God, we can call it, right? What does that emanate from? Well, the journey of the soul internally is a challenging one, going through many layers until you stand on the precipice of what we might call complete absolution, meaning I'm dissolving into the absolute presence, the singularity from which I as a soul arose. You are that singularity, you are that presence, and you are a flowing expression of the presence. But on the precipice of that absolution, the ego, the identity, recognizes its imminent demise, and that all kinds of things precipitate at that point. Fear, for example, that you will be lost, you that you are will be lost, which is an illusion. It's only the separated egoic identity which needs to break down so that you can come back into that sense of, just pure existence, pure presence, infinite potential. It must be the singularity, because that's from whence everything arose, from where everything emerged. And people who have ventured there in the past have spoken of this complete breakdown of anything that attaches or grasps or needs something externally. You fall back into yourself, deeper and deeper into a well of infinite presence. That's when you truly know yourself as the creative source of life, and in your particular fractal too. So everything then is arrayed in fractals of this. So you are that source presence, having your own unique individualized experience or flow of that energy. But that is a big breakthrough to make in order to accept that dissolution, that absolution into presence, where you're not grasping, needing, clinging, where you're just settling deep into yourself. And so souls, people, if you like, internally journeying, come to that precipice, but often fear stops them from going beyond. And so this is where they become susceptible to some kind of simulation. So a creator God, and you as the I am presence. Well, you as the I am, right? And why is that a problem? It's a problem because it's still creating some subtle level of identity, some subtle creator as an entity. That's what we need to be wary of. And so you have this simulation created on the precipice of absolution that stops people from fully going into and returning into the singularity that they truly are. So there's some kind of final temptation, like being fully healed or having what you want or think you want, or there's angelics and lights and ascended masters and everything else saying that you're in some kind of heaven, whereas the true source is that simply of absoluteness, of pure presence, of self-acceptance, of arrival, of not needing any justification, any validation. You're just there. Now it does take some breaking through, and there are many who have resisted that final absolution, that final breaking down into presence. And from that, they're able to manipulate energy from the source, control it and project it into a simulation. That's what we have here on the planet. And it's found its way into all manner of walks of life, including spirituality and healing. So when you're looking for an external source, you're channeling some external source to bring it into healing. Well, I ask you, why? Why is that necessary? We are all, in our sentience, the flower of life. You are, I am, and we can call that, and all sentient life around us. And we can call that a fractal of the totality. Here's the paradox. In yourself, you are the totality, but you're also a fractal of it, the flower of life, a spinning torus, an animation of existence of life itself. You are that too. You don't need something external to infuse into that to make it whole. It already is whole. So you don't need energy to come into it to complete it. It's already complete. However, the complexity is that another who is animating their flower of life, their torus, could sit alongside and activate that in you. It's like a tuning fork. It's like, one strikes their tuning fork, it comes active in the other. But it's important to say that in each of us, we have our own resonance, we have our own unique frequency. Otherwise, we would be the same, and we're not. We're relativistic, right? We have a difference between us, a different resonance. Even though at the source we are one, we still have that individual expression and resonance. That's crucial to honor that, because that's how you honor relativistic experience. Without it, there is no experience. Without this and that, there is none. So true healing then would be me resonating my frequency, authentic, real, fractal experience that triggers, that animates, that resonates something in you. And that comes alive in you. But what comes alive? Your frequency, not mine, not the healer's, not something external, not something you're calling upon to heal you, but someone who's resonating alongside and helping that emerge in you. That's not giving you something. That's not a transferal of consciousness. And that's what we must be careful of in some of the spiritual practices, because they are misleading, in my view, leading people astray. They're causing attachment and investment and interrelation with that healing modality, and therefore an identity, because here's the healing modality, here's you. Now you've created a fixation between the two, whereas really true healing is setting each free in their own unique torus. So a simulation has been created where some kind of energy is projected to try to give the feeling of completeness or wholeness, but it's coming external to you. We see this, of course, in the religions, where people are praying towards some kind of Lord on a pedestal to make them feel whole, complete, to take away their sins, so to speak, and remove their karma, when really removing karma is the internal journey that we're each embarked upon. So someone can resonate your field, bring it alive, illuminate it, expand it, But then it's up to you to look deep inside at what karma needs unraveling and on what density needs ejecting so as to integrate soul fully. So for example, taking away all your sins actually removes the capacity to really fully integrate in your own right. That's a clear, to me, deception that I've explored and expressed in the book Resurrection, and how to see past that deception, that delusion, which is also coming into a lot of healing practices where there's a calling upon some external energy. The energy is not external to you, it's internal to you. It's the same as the flow. Where does the flow come from? Your fractal is flowing, expressing, and it's expressing within, let's say, a concurrent inquiry that some are having, like, what is it like to be in human form? What is it like to be breaking free of density and moving into a higher consciousness? And so there's a collective inquiry that souls are having, and it brings these fractals together within a mutual inquiry of flow. But the flow is coming within you. So within that movement toward ascension, we can say, there will be different experiences and expressions of that. Some will be supporting, some might be showing the way, some might be encouraging, some might be, having different dimensional experiences along the path. So we're all going to have a unique experience of it, but there's a movement, a flow that will bring us together as we cross through this 4D karmic Red Sea and break out into 5, 6, 7D. Let's look at what I mean then by ascension for a moment, as opposed to a prevalent process on the planet right now, which is soul harvesting. Let's be clear what that is and what's going on. Again, it's something I've gotten into deeply in the book Resurrection. You often hear stories recounted of near-death experiences where people travel down a tunnel and into the light. This, to me, is a gross harvesting technique. It's tempting or attracting the soul out of its own embodied experience-centered, anchored presence into a temptation towards something out there which seems compelling. A love and light bubble, the sense of heaven, which is a kind of, but to be careful, it's a dumbing down, diminishing experience, even though it feels cosseting and comforting and providing of some kind of energetic resource. The opposite is to have the fullness, the sense of complete absolution within yourself, centeredness, anchoredness. Now, when you're in that, reality shapes, forms, bends around what you're being. So you're seeing relativistic experiences out there, but they are the effect, they are the product of you sitting deep within yourself. And that's the difference in passing on. When there's a passing on of the soul, then it's a deepening into that experience and expanding multidimensionality. So there's a clear difference. There's a temptation where there's still identification and a need for something external, someone, some organization, some healer or whatever, where there's a need for that. I'm not saying don't work with these organizations. I'm just saying be clear that what you're working on is the completeness, the work to fulfillment and absolution within yourself. Is the power being granted back to you, or is it being subtly taken from you? This is crucial to be aware of. Or are you becoming dependent as opposed to create or unleashing, unfolding your own sovereignty? Is that being encouraged in you? Because that's crucial. So you have what's going on as a love and light simulation bubble, which is 4D orientated. as opposed to higher 5D, 6D, 7D. And it's easy to get, well, plenty of people being duped by it because it has this feeling of being looked after, a paternalistic energy that you've connected into, that provides all the answers, that spoon feeds, even through social media is happening, of course, with the application of AI. So it's happening on a 3D level, but it's happening on a 4D level too. So you feel like, oh yeah, I've expanded, I've attained, I've reached where I need to be. That's the sense of the bubble. We need to understand the difference between that and the truly flowing 5D, we can call it 5D state, but it goes up higher than that. The 5D state is an interrelated flow with the naturalness and existence of life that speaks back to you, that's a flowing experience that speaks into nature, that speaks into the patterning of signs, synchronicity, symbology. So you're in the presence, but you're flowing as an interrelated experience all the time within that. And everything's speaking through that dynamic. So it's very different from the kind of static state of, it's very of an inertia, which is what we can say about the 4D bubble, and it providing resources to stay stuck within that. So souls are being duped into that static state, as opposed to having the courage once more to drop into the sense of pure presence, of not knowing. That is one of the greatest challenges and the differences between the 4D synthetic, the simulation, and being in a truly 5D state, because you're settling back into the not knowing and allowing yourself to be comfortable in that. Not knowing is infinite potential. There's nothing manifest, and so the ego is calling out for an answer to some particular issue in your life and desperately clinging to the first thing that shows up, as opposed to settling back and sitting in the stillness and breaking down reactivity, identification felt as tightness or clinging or grasping. Let's be clear, you are much more than the need for that. It's only identity, the smallness, that needs that. Instead, we break through those limitations, unravel those validations or fixations that we think we need. Instead, we let go and let the simulation release from our grasp, from it grasping us. You come into the presence, you sit strong, courageously in the unknown, and you wait for that divine spark. Now, it could come instantaneously, or it could take some time. That divine spark says, yes, this is how we feel. This is how you feel to be now. This is what's animating now. Let that rise within you as a natural feeling of rightness of soul. Let that come through and cultivate the experience of that. And it grows within you, but that then causes the field around you to shape through what we can call the law of resonance. There's an interrelation of different fractals who then start to move or merge, or not merge, but I have to be careful of that, not merge, but move with an inquiry that is resonant between them. And so you've got this flow experience happening. And that is more the 5D experience. And the 5D experience is constantly reflecting back to you and saying, well, who are you in this? How do you feel to be? What is the new aspect of beingness that wants to come through now? And that's I would say that's a 6D experience. And then you've got the magic that's happening, the alchemy that's coming in through 7D. This is something that is beyond the 4D simulation, that everything is spoon-fed to you. Instead, you're self-defining, you're self-determining, you're self-actualizing, not once, but constantly doing that. That becomes the expression, the animation of who you really are. And that is the clear difference between reality and the simulation. The simulation is broad, let's be clear. It's trying to tempt souls out of reality into its own construct. We have to be clear that we are not being susceptible to that and that we're breaking free of it. Because what I would say to you is this, is that whilst the simulation is prevalent on the planet right now, it is also weakening as people are beginning to call, the overprotectiveness, the over constraint, the control of it. People are beginning to call it on all aspects, in all ways. Now, we have had in the Openhand movement direct connections with the entity that calls itself Ra, that knows itself as that being, the entity from Sirius, that is the architect, that is controlling the reality we're existing within. Because in my observation of the work that Openhand has been doing to support the liberation of the planet, the best way to do that is not through fighting these various different intervention groups. For example, we've worked with the Anunnaki and helped them heal. We're working with Greys all the time. We've worked with the reptilians, and the reptilians are mostly realigning now, which is fabulous to see. I felt like we had made some major breakthroughs, and indeed we did. And then we hit this blanketing, cosseting layer called Ra, who's then reconfigured using AI and other synthetic entities called tall whites, for example, to reconfigure this simulation and increase it in complexity so as to keep pulling people in the dramas and the loops. So we have engaged directly with this entity, and it's been a fascinating dialogue, I have to tell you. There are some key themes that have emerged from those exchanges. So for example, Ra is extremely confident, extremely arrogant, I would say, not meaning to be judgmental, but confident in the simulation that it's created, that it's had millions of years to perfect this, not just here, but in different constellations and on different planets. And why it's so confident is one key factor, I would say, and that is tacit acquiescence by what appears to be a majority of life on the planet toward that simulation. How strange of me to say this, when on the one hand we seem to want to be breaking free of the control, but on the other hand to say that there's a broad acquiescence to it. Why? Why am I saying that? Because Ra is a paternalistic energy, which is taking energy from, we can say the source, but also from the sun through the moon. And we've looked at in this organization how the moon is artificial. You can clearly see it in the various dynamics, its geometry, its orbit, how its perfect symmetry in order to block out the sun at an eclipse. I mean, few stop to think, well, how does that happen? Coincidentally, does that happen? For example, I'm not going to get into the dynamics of the moon now. I've gotten into it in the new book, Resurrection, and shared the evidence freely on Openhand website for people to investigate. But essentially, this is a key part of this simulation, and it provides a certain construct for people to live within. And if you like, people are comforted by having some framework to exist within. The ego is, we can say, not the source, not the soul connecting to the source in you. That's not, I would say, not content by this, and that's why the constant questioning and the need to break free of it. But plenty are in themselves acquiescing to that comfort, that protection, that energetic resource that's exploiting energy, but they're gaining from it. That's why predominantly a lot of people to some degree are acquiescing to it, and that's why Ra sees himself as the paternalistic provider figure for that desire. It's the same as needing some spiritual teacher, leader, or icon to follow and putting that on a pedestal and worshipping it out there, as opposed to making the realizations inside yourself. Again, this figure, these figures through history have been placed on pedestals, and people are encouraged to hand over their sovereignty and their power to this healer effect, if you like, this Messiah out there, when we are all Messiahs. We are all anointed ones inside, which is what Messiah means, anointed with the divine spark that you are. And so Ra is confident, arrogant that he can sustain and continue to sustain this simulation, and that people will acquiesce to it. However, as we communicated in a recent dialogue with Ra, the situation on the planet has changed to a strong degree, where the balance of sentient life, and now I'm speaking about nature itself, because nature has been ridden roughshod over by this simulation. 50% of the ecosystem's gone since the start of the Industrial Revolution. 50% of the trees. So yes, maybe society isn't generating man-made fossil fuel emissions that are causing global warming. I agree. However, the ecosystems are being obliterated, destroyed by what is going on because of this simulation. Now, the moon has been put in place to dampen the natural toroidal flow of Gaia down and to suppress it, to suppress her vibrant Kundalini energy. And that was one of the key reasons it was put there, is to keep the density in the atmosphere, to keep the density of the magnetic field that stops the flower of life regenerating as the grand galactic convergence unfolds. The energy is heightening and the toroidal flow is wanting to accelerate as a natural Kundalini expression, but this is being suppressed by enhanced magnetic effect from the moon. So it seems that Ra is confident through this construct, through this dynamic, that the planet can to some degree in the 3D ride out the grand galactic convergence and re-establish itself once this great cleansing mechanism has unfolded. So there's that confidence, or else to go elsewhere in the solar system or the cosmos and take a swathe of humanity with him and with that collectivized bubble. There is that confidence, there is that belief. Well, there is a strong force of liberation that is infusing the solar system right now. So a collective clarion call has gone out, and our star-being sisters and brothers from across the cosmos are here, are arriving in different forms, in different locations, to help reanimate the toroidal flow in the grand galactic convergence and bring different civilizations, bring humanity awake in the reactivation of Kundalini, and to establish what we can express here on this planet as a bridgehead from the lower physical reality through this 4D karmic Red Sea, breaking it open, parting it, and connecting into the higher dimensions. So it's a bridgehead, if you like. And as that bridgehead establishes itself and anchors itself in reality, breaking through the simulation and connecting up to the higher dimensional beings, energies, frequencies of the new paradigm, for example, then the simulation is going to oscillate and vacillate, weaken until it's stripped off progressively. Now you might say this is a great thing. Of course it is a great thing. But you want to be really clear that you aren't still plugged into the simulation as this all culminates. Otherwise the soul gets harvested off with it. And that brings me right back to the need to ground, to integrate, to connect deep inside of you and really question these spurious influences that are coming in through the field, that are coming into the chakras, break them down, challenge one's reactivity, triggering identification, and use that as a tool, a means by which you can break down any attached investment in a particular construct inside of you. So you're coming increasingly into the pure presence through the chakras. And a lot of trust is necessary with that. Why? Because you hit this point, and we call it in the Openhand work, the realignment, the great realignment. You hit this point where the way we create reality changes. Instead of continually efforting and grasping out there to acquire something, whether it be working in a particular job or a particular environment or a particular setup, as opposed to settling in yourself and watching the steps create around you, the opportunities, the possibilities. Now, yes, the simulation owns a large percentage of the resources right now on the planet, but that's breaking, it's weakening, and the energy of higher consciousness is coming in and it's infusing through. It's connecting people who want to break free, who want to be liberated and go with the 5D shift. So it's starting to connect people in that movement, that flow itself. And so increasingly connection, resources, kindred, friendships are generating, building, that have this sense of orientation toward liberation and breaking out the simulation. This is starting to strengthen on the planet now. And as the convergence of star beings groups happen around the planet and in the solar system, as we move through this high energy segment of the galaxy, that's only going to strengthen. And you want to be clear that you're moving with that. We're in this window now of maybe, up to 30 years, 20 to 30 years. We're in that window, but it's begun. It's not like we're waiting for 20 or 30 years for it to culminate. We're in that window now. And the invitation is to feel the activation of energy, the accelerations of energy inside, connect deeper into the source, break down the attachments, the investments, and let reality create from the freedom that you are. You're then coming into a more 5D existence. Now, you're living it now. Okay, you may still be engaged in the simulation. You may still be in the matrix to some degree. You may still be working within it, but it's coming from your self-determination, your empowerment, your sovereignty. And if things need to change within it for you, then you're breaking down the fear that somehow you won't thrive going forwards, that you have to maintain rigid fixations within the system or you won't somehow be supported. Because now the energy is coming in to help you change, to transform, to innovate, to create in a different way. You're learning essentially to walk a path of light through it all. You take a step that's based on your authenticity, your sovereignty, your sense of natural beingness. You take a step and you watch how the light comes to meet that and embrace that. It's not about trying to acquire resources so you can make a step happen. That's poverty consciousness. You're saying, I need the resources in order to take a step. I need the resources in order to be something, essentially is what you're saying. And so you're feeding that poverty consciousness, you're resonating it to the universe, and then you have to live it. And that's what the simulation preys upon. Instead of saying, look, I'm done with that. I've gone down those streets, those roads. They never lead to fulfillment. There's always something that I feel I'm missing inside of myself. And I'm prepared courageously to discover, to strip away the simulation, to strip away this deception, to break it out from within me and really feel the truth and the essence of what I am. You know it when you're in it because it feels like rightness. You feel like yeah, I've arrived in myself. And now I'm not going to sell that for anything. I'm not going to give that away. Whatever you might tempt me with in the external, I'm going to be that. I'm going to experience that. And I'm going to dare to step forward with the choices and the feelings and the sense of authentic beingness that is asking to be expressed and actualized in the external. So I might then, in my work situation, require different conditions or different remuneration or reduction in time, for example, that you give, or in how you work. So there's always movement, there's always means of animation and expression of authenticity, and taking those steps, let's say also in relationship, greater freedom, greater space, greater self-expression within relationship, and not being so rigid and fixed and dependent or codependent. Maybe you can break that open and let the freedom come through in self-expression. Now you are saying to the universe, I want to be me, I want to be authentic, and I want to flow with the naturalness of life. And more than just I want, I'm going to do these things. I'm going to express these things, come what may, whatever happens externally. What's going to happen is the simulation's going to recede because you're expressing sovereignty. It's going to recede to some degree. Now, in the beginning, you might think, oh, wow, I'm suffering a loss because I'm losing those connections. I'm creating the space. And so you might experience some kind of loss. And so it's going to feel like some kind of sacrifice as you pull away from being reactive and invested in the simulation. And instead, you're coming into the sovereignty of self. And now it creates in a different way. It lands in a different way of expression, actualization of being. This is the transformation that is being invited in the shift right now. So breaking that out and setting the soul free. And that is all about, that's all expressed and included within this new book, Resurrection, this new body of work that symbolizes a new phase, a pivotal phase of the shift going forward, as we really challenge where these influences are coming in from, these convoluting influences in the 4D karmic Red Sea, as I've metaphored it. So it's really breaking that apart inside of yourself, having the courage to do that, and really center in what is real, authentic, and sovereign for you, but also as a flowing movement, because that's where the energy is heightening to right now. And with that in mind, I felt to conclude the podcast with a meditation, the kind of one that we work on a great deal within the Openhand movement, and that is opening through the chakras. The chakras, what are they? Well, they're points of singularity in the torus through your being, connecting into the source. And so we breathe into them, soften into them, open through them, and progressively you're breaking out the simulation within you, and you're infusing soul consciousness so that truth then flows from you through the chakras and into your life. So bring your attention to the breath, inhaling through the nose, and begin by exhaling through the mouth. And as you breathe, feeling the sense in the back of the throat. You're connecting into the singularity through the throat chakra. Feel the expansion, a sense of timelessness, and the feeling of arrival inside yourself. Imagine inside of you, you're sitting on the banks of a lake. You might even visualize that. And you're looking into an infinite well of presence. Of course, the presence can't be experienced because it's absolute, it's not relative, it's all encompassing. But surrendering into it, dissolving into it, coming into it can be experienced. It is that feeling of arrival, deep sense of presence and acceptance within yourself. And then you can contain this experience by closing the mouth and inhaling, exhaling through the nose. So you deepen it in the throat chakra. Now notice as you inhale, that sense of expansion probably wants to expand upwards through the head. And let that happen. Let it come up through into the third eye. So you inhale, you're inhaling up into the third eye. You exhale and you're expanding through, you're opening out through it. And you could take a slight pause when you've fully exhaled in the chakra. Just feel the sense of that infinite well of presence. And then up toward the crown. So you inhale all the way up through the head, into the crown, expand, exhale through the crown, and then hold the breath. Just a moment or two. Again, the sense of sitting around this well of presence inside of you. So now you're pretty open in the higher chakras. We can exhale the sense of that expansion, openness, down through the lower chakras. So inhale through the nose, exhale through the throat, into the heart and through the heart. And expand through the heart. And pause on the out-breath, at the end of the out-breath. Pause, deepen, feel, surrender in. And deeper still. Inhale, exhale down through the throat, the chest, the heart, solar plexus. Here's where we might hit some density on the intellectual plane. When you really open through the chakras, you might experience some sense of nausea there. But that's not to stop, but to persist and unfold, unravel through, open through, let go, surrender deeper into yourself. Again, pausing on the full extent of the out-breath and just feel that softening, opening happening. And then deeper still, inhale, exhale down through the throat, through the chest, the heart, solar plexus, and through the sacrum. Now this might be now confronting the plane of emotions and relationships, attachment in relationships. Can you let go? Can you unwind from that? The need to be completed, validated in the external, and just fully, totally accept yourself and the relationship you have with the divine. I'm not saying not to be in relationship with people. I'm saying to know the truth of your connectivity with the divine, that you don't need someone external to fulfill or complete you. You are complete. And now all the way to the base. Inhale up, exhale down through the throat, chest, abdomen, all the way to the base, and exhale through, and then hold on the full extent of the out-breath. Sit in the density. Now often there's a tendency in spiritual work to seek the higher dimensions, but really what we're looking for is a coherency, a connectedness, an anchoredness, a transition through the chakras, and then you're expanding out and up. So right down to the base, exhale through, open through. And so just by fairly basic, simple practices, but done consistently over time, we can gain sovereignty. You can gain sovereignty through your chakras, through your field, and then of your own toroidal flow, your own fractal, and that's going to create life around you in a different way. You're not chasing, you're not struggling, you're not grasping, but you're manifesting from your being in the external. You're creating opportunities, pathways, connections, possibilities that you can then step into as if walking a path of light. If you get a sense that this could help you, that you resonate with it, that deeper immersion within that kind of practice would support your journey, then do come and get involved in the Openhand work, because it is illuminating the pathway for people around the planet, breaking open through this 4D karmic Red Sea, this simulation that we have gotten stuck within, that humanity has gotten embroiled within. We are breaking that simulation down. And you want to be really sure when it gets stripped from the planet that you are still here, standing strong, courageously, and this bridgehead from the lower densities into the new paradigm. And then when the whole cleansing mechanism is complete, as it will in the culmination of the solar micronova event, then you step into the 5, 6, 7D through the process of Maya Samadhi, empowered ascension within yourself, not into some external collectivized bubble. You're ascending within yourself and then actualizing the reality around you. You're not chasing it down in the external. This is the crucial difference between the reality of the shift itself into 5, 6, 7D and the harvest, the soul harvest into the 4D collectivized bubble, which will be stripped from the earth, is as we move into this culminating shift. This is my encouragement. Yes, I know it's a challenging theme, it's a challenging subject, that there is this level of deception going on around us, but once you call it, once you set sail in your own determined sovereignty, flow and pathway, once you do that, once you determine that, then increasingly you see the deception of it, and it strips out from your being. And that's exactly what the work here at Openhand is all about. If you feel a resonance, if you feel we can support you in that journey, then come and get involved, come and engage with us. But do be clear, we will be offering back, we will be reflecting back to you your own sovereignty, your own empowerment, your own direction in the flow. Namaste. Been inspired? Then get involved with the revolutionary work of Openhand. Join us on seminars and retreats, online and terrestrial, for groundbreaking meditations, illuminating self-realizations, and plenty of fun. It's all supporting the great planetary shift to 5D consciousness. Join kindred spirits today. Visit openhandweb.org.